Sono le 9. Iniziamo. Ok. Va bene, io direi di iniziare se adesso. Quindi buongiorno a tutti e appunto riprendiamo i lavori del congresso con questa prima seduta di sabato mattina e direi senza perdere tempo do la parola alla professoressa Elena GIL Clemente della Università di Zaragoza. Prego.
Well, sorry, because there are a lot of things here. Well, yeah. Good morning. My name is Elena GIL Clemente, and I am associate teacher in University of Zaragoza in Spain in the area of didactic of mathematics. I have worked with Professor Ana Millan-Gasca in my doctorate and in some historical studies about the French pedagogue Édouard Séguin. In this talk, I am going to share with you a research in progress about the figure of a mathematical Spanish pedagogue and scientist woman, Margarida Comas, or Margarida Comas in the local language, and her contributions to the mathematical education of primary school teachers, considering mainly her place in the international context. I will begin with a short chronology for locating her and exposing the current studies about her figure. I will follow introducing to you her writings about mathematics education and the network of international references that appear in them. The core of the communication will be the approach to mathematics education that Margarida Comas spells out in her writings. I will finish with some conclusions and future research. Well, here you have a synthesis of her biography. She was born in Balear Islands in 1892 and lived in Spain till the end of the Spanish Civil War in 1939, when he was almost 50 years old. After the war, she was exiled in England and lives there more than 30 years till her death in 1972. In this communication, we are interested in her first years of studies and work. There are three outstanding aspects in her biography. I have written in red, in black, and in green for a better understanding. I will begin with green things. She was a woman with many intellectual interests that include science and pedagogy. She got access to a bachelor's degree, and after she does the test to become elemental and superior maestra, something unusual in Spain because the women normally access to this title from primary school, not from a bachelor of science as her. She soon decides to prepare herself to be a teacher of prospective teachers in the so-called Escuela de Estudios Superiores of Magisterio. When she reached the corresponding title, she began studies of science, achieving the degree in 1925, and she didn't stop and achieved to be the first woman in Spain with a doctorate in science, with a doctorate dissertation in 1928. Well, I'm going to the red rose. She had the opportunity, this is a second interesting aspect of her biography, she had the opportunity to travel abroad and to contact different scientists and pedagogues. First, hand in hand with her family. Notice that she made her first travel to France, Belgium, and Switzerland with her father when she was only 19 years old. And afterwards, she got 2 grants from the Junta de Ampliación de Estudios, a well-known council, a Spanish council, aiming at training young scientists abroad who could contribute to the advancement of science in Spain. And finally, she participated in 3 congresses about pedagogy from 1929 to 1933 as an outstanding member of the New Education Fellowships. I think in Italian is Scuola Nova or something like that. Well, and the places she lived were conditioned by her studies and afterwards by her work as an autonomous woman. Normal schools for training prospective teachers in several cities, Madrid, Santander, Santander, Tarragona, and Barcelona. And at last, she works at University of Barcelona, specifically in pedagogy. She teaches biology for children. Well, after the Spanish Civil War, she was exiled in England due to her tight contacts with Republicans and worked first with Spanish children refugees and afterwards in an innovative school in Devon. Her role as an activist in favor of Republican peace has motivated a recent recognition in Spain, being the subject of several studies. Most of them are centered in her political profile and her work as a pedagogue of science. María Ángeles Delgado has faced the coordination of a volume in 2009 comprising several studies. This one by Charlie Ryan that focuses on her connections with England is particularly interesting for our research. In this talk, we are going to focus on her thoughts on the teaching of mathematics to children, on which there are fewer studies. Modesto Sierra Vázquez and Carmen Esteban have studied these contributions in Spain, but without dipping into the international context in which Comas is inscribed. All these studies you can see here focus on seeing her as a forerunner, as a person ahead of her time, in whom we can hear the echoes of modern mathematical competencies and so on. But however, the aim of this research in progress is to bring to light all the international connections of her work, which place her in a period of great cultural richness in terms of concerns about the renewal of the teaching of mathematics, and to locate as far as possible the sources of her approach. Only 2 papers about these aspects, only there are 2 papers about these aspects, one by Professor Ana Millán Gasca and one for a Brazilian woman, but they don't focus only on Comas. Well, Comas mathematics production focus on primary mathematical education. That means till 12 years old. It began in 1950 with her final memory to become a teacher in normal schools, those destined to prospective primary teachers. And curiously, at least for me, because it's my main line of research, she devoted this work to children with learning difficulties. She shared this interest in her beginnings with other European pedagogues of the already mentioned New Education Fellowship, such as Maria Montessori or Ovid de Crowley. The rest of her production, here is the first one, and the rest of her production is concentrated in 10 years after enjoying her grant in England and during the years of an intense activity abroad, in which she established personal contacts with pedagogues of the New Education Fellowships. Well, here you have her writings about mathematics education that include, in the one hand, 3 reviews about foreign books of mathematics education for children, 1 about geometry and 2 about arithmetic. And in second place, 6 papers in Revista Española de Pedagogía, a Spanish pedagogical journal. I will speak soon about it. All of them target to in-service or prospective primary school teachers. And at last, in blue, 3 books, 1 devoted to children, a kind of arithmetic textbook, and the other 2 are the aim of this talk, and she wrote them having in mind prospective and in-service teachers. Well, it is important to outline that this production is framed in a context of a movement of renewal of the training of prospective teachers in Spain that lasts more than one decade, from 1922 to 1938. This movement was promoted by teachers from normal schools, and it is called by some researchers some normalist movement. We are speaking about teachers that know European trends thanks to their readings or their travel abroad. Some of them had had grants from Junta de Ampliación de Estudios, and among them there was a few interested in mathematics, and Margarida Comas was one of them. This teacher published all their work in two journals, one devoted to normal schools, and the other, Revista de Pedagogía, had a broader audience. Margarida Comas published all her work about in this last one. All this intellectual movement culminated in an ambitious legislative reform of the study plans of normal schools in 1931 during the Republica, called Professional Plan, which gave university status to these studies. Referring to mathematics, a subject about methodology of mathematics was included, comprising psychology, history, and teaching methods. Well, beginning with the study of the two books she wrote about the methodology of teaching arithmetic and geometry, it's surprising the great number of bibliographical references he handled, almost all of them contemporary of her, and how it increases, you can see here, in the 10 years that elapsed between the two books. This increase parallels to her visits abroad, not only to study science and its methodology, but to assist to pedagogical congresses also. Well, they saw a deep knowledge of the work of the main renovators of teaching mathematics. Notice that she has read authors not only from France, Belgium, and England she has visited, but also from Italy, USA, and even Germany. Among them, there are books focused on general pedagogy, others more specifically focused in mathematics, arithmetic, or geometry, and in the last years, she added some referred to psychology. Well, I want to stop here just a moment to remember that Professor Ana Millán Gasca has brought into light what she calls a hidden thread of intellectuals from the early 90s that focus in genuine mathematics for children in the frame of mathematics for all. They lived in a period of growing sensibility and understanding of childhood, and share also political visions of a modern and equal society. These intellectuals confront to a persistent tradition in mathematical education, which origins can be traced back to the Italian Scuole di Abaco, and that focus on numeracy and writing arithmetic. These intellectuals propose, in the first hand, to improve mathematics methods of teaching, to innovate contents and methods, giving, for instance, more relevance to oral arithmetic and to geometry, and to adapt the teaching of mathematics to children's minds. This movement lives a golden age in the beginning of the 20s, and Margarida Comas is framed in it with other women. Well, in Comas' work, we can see the echoes of this movement, although she refers only specifically to these authors I have written in red. Well, it's a color code in my presentation, as you see. However, well, she refers to Maria Montessori, to De Corolli, to these American writers that write about the role of play in education, and Benjamin Branford of the UK Board of Education. But however, in many occasions in her books, she uses expressions such as, in other countries, it is known, I have seen in English school, it is currently taught, the modern teaching, that refers to her readings and also to her actual knowledge of foreign schools. We are sharing with you an open research focused on identifying the origin of all these ideas she uses in her approach. Well, now we are going to get closer to her thought through the reading and analysis of the two books she aimed to prospective and in-service primary teachers. The two books have almost the same title. The first one is How it is taught arithmetic and geometry, and the second is Methodology of Arithmetic and Geometry. And are a kind of unique book, a handy book, we can say, where she addressed to these teachers using a genuine and direct style. Let's listen to her. I think it's interesting. I have written the quotes in Spanish, just for those who prefer to read the original. It's not very different from Italian. And I have made a quick translation to English that I am going to read. Well, we begin with general ideas about teaching of mathematics. She says, we would like this workbook to make the preparation of the class easier and more fruitful for the teacher, especially for the rural teacher, who because of their isolation is the one who specifically needs support and help by suggesting ideas, problems, approaches, but in no way replacing their own personality, never making them a mere repeater. Teaching is a science, but above all, it is an art. Well, she begins directly aiming to teachers, especially rural teachers. In Spain, there are a lot of rural teachers in this epoch, outlining their important commitment and the need to develop their own style. The second quote I have chosen is this. She says, it's not a matter, as some uninformed people believe, of masking the difficulties to inadvertently make the children swallow them like a pill grubbed in sugar, but of presenting them in such a way that it's the students themselves who wants to solve them, making the necessary effort pleasant, not because it is wished as a game, but because it is in accordance with the child's inclinations and wishes. Well, she soon claims children's dignity. They don't need to play to hide mathematical difficulties. She believes in children's capacity of understanding maths. Moreover, she also believes in a natural disposition of children to mathematics. Well, and the third one is the idea would be that the program is so combined that each central truth would be found as an answer to an spontaneously arising practical problem and involving manual as well as mental activity. Here, she describes the clue of all her approach. She shared with other pedagogues the need of linking subjects taught to real problems, but she outlines that sometimes it's only an ideal. She shows here her idea about active school, not only manual activity, but also mental activity. Well, talking specifically about teaching of mathematics, she said, there are many who confuses the real with the useful, using only problems of commercial arithmetic as if children were all little dependents. Another tendency is to confuse the world in which the child lives with what he can see and touch. Remember that imagination plays a very important role in the children's lives. She shared the ideas of her contemporary innovators about the role of what he calls commercial problems, all about money and written arithmetic and so on, so present actually in our schools, at least in Spain. She wants to respect children's nature and outlines the role of imagination in the building of children's real world. Well, here you can see how she proposes an integrated approach of arithmetic and geometry and uses, as many of the authors she has read, geometrical representations for understanding arithmetic. For example, here you have several representations of number 19 and the well-known use of rectangles for showing fractions and for comparing lengths. She avoids tricks to perform arithmetic operations and focus in the understanding of positional decimal systems. For example, you have here a configuration of points she proposes in her books, but it is taken from a book of Margaret Ponnet. It's exactly the same, but his books is in white and white. Okay. I will, talking about geometry, she thinks that it has been abandoned in the recent years, and this is one of the reasons why in her second book, she focuses in teaching, in its teaching. She says, it is the branch of mathematics that most naturally interests children who do it without knowing in many of their games. However, she doesn't reach to write a geometry addressed to children as she does with arithmetic. Here you have some ideas about her vision of teaching geometry. She says that geometry is the science of shapes, but also of dimensions, and she proposes a lot of comparison activities. She spoke also about the use of materials, that this is one of the bets of the new education fellowship, but she's so cautious about it. She says that this material shouldn't distract children attention. And for finishing this brief approach to their style, here you have some examples of the way she conceives the dynamic of a class. The dialogue is central, always appealing to children reasoning. This is an example taken directly from a book of Benchara Bramford, and she translates exactly to Spanish. This is the extract from the English book, but she translates exactly to show her ideas about what she calls a vivid class. And she also recommends the use of images that put into play children's imagination. For concluding, undoubtedly, Margarida Comas was a woman of a strong personality that experiments in herself and in her work a tension between some approaches. Don't forget, she was mainly a scientist that is progressively interested in primary education because of her work. Along her writings, some interesting dualism appear between the formative and utilitarian values of mathematics. She doesn't consider them opposed, between the need of beginning with concrete, intuitive, and even experimental aspects. Don't forget that her principal focus of interest is science, but this is a way only to open the path to the indispensable abstraction inherent to mathematics, and the contrast and relation between reality and utility. Her serious formation as a scientist encouraged her to make demands on children and not to consider that there are topics that are inaccessible to them. Actual research about her in Spain is focused in her figure as an activist, as a forerunner, and tiptoe through her relationship with international context. This initial works confirms that Margarida Comas share the interwoven threads emerging in the ongoing research about the golden age of reflection on mathematics and children, and this make her figure relevant. These threads could be the attention to the specificities of young children, the change of the emphasis from literacy to orality, the extension of the aims of mathematical education, including geometry, the use of and design of gadgets intended as rational games, and the openness to playfulness and beauty. Tracing the origins of her proposal for mathematics education in her contemporary international literature is an open question for future research. Well, thank you for your attention.